going back to where we started, it's called hydrolysis. Hydrolysis. Lysis means to split or to rupture. In this case, you're splitting the molecule into two parts by using water, by putting water back in. And you can see, and you know, you may be getting lost a little bit. It's the first time now we've done it. But you can see how we're back to the starting point. Got our hydroxyls on both sides. That's how we do digestion. Hydrolysis is exactly the opposite of condensation. Condensation takes water out. Hydrolysis puts water back in. Condensation makes small molecules bigger, making disaccharide. Hydrolysis makes a bigger molecule smaller because you're splitting the molecule. So again, hydrolysis basically is what we do for digestion.
And you said it puts water back into the molecule.
Goes back in where it came out.
Okay.
Now, where I was going with all of this, the lactose intolerance, people who are lactose intolerant do not have the enzyme to split the molecule. There's specifically an enzyme called lactase. You may not know this, but none of us is as good as when we were children at breaking down dairy products. It's off the record a little bit, but when we're children, we have this thing in our stomachs called renin, and the renin eat completely. They lose the enzyme completely, and therefore they cannot break down the molecule. Now, it doesn't do any great harm. You know, they'll get sick a little bit and diarrhea and this kind of stuff, but you know, no great harm is done. There is some pills you can take. They're called lactate. I understand they work quite well, and basically they contain the enzyme. So you just, before you're going to eat, you pop a pill, and then you just eat whatever you want. And I understand it works very well. I have a couple of friends, I like to eat pizza, and I have a couple of friends who like to eat pizza also, so they come out with me. But they're lactose intolerant. But essentially, they like the pizza enough that they don't care what's about to happen to them. So we'll go and eat the pizza, and then I'll be sitting there having a good time, and those two jump up and say, time to go home. And then they go on home, and they do their thing, and they're ready now for the next pizza. And I still remember asking them one time, why don't you take the lactate and not go through all of this? And these guys went metaphysical on me. They said something weird about not wanting to pollute the purity of the pizza or some darn thing. I don't even know what they were talking about. But I didn't know, I didn't want to ask them anymore. So now I just let them go home and do their thing and we eat pizza. So no real harm is done, you know, discomfort and so on. But again, these people are lacking the enzyme. That's what happens. It can happen at any age. Both men and women. It can happen at any age. I still remember I used to like to go for pizza every Friday with one of the math teachers, Ted Koski. And if you don't know who he is, you should meet him. He's probably the most unique person on this campus. He was wearing wizard costumes years before Harry Potter came along. And he still does. At any rate, he and I used to go out for pizza, and then when he turned 40, he all of a sudden became lactose intolerant. And he couldn't eat the pizza anymore. He couldn't eat the cheese. I still remember trying to convince him that I could eat it. He could watch me eat. But he didn't seem interested, and that was the end of that. I'm mentioning the story just because he was 40 years old. Then all of a sudden became lactose intolerant. And, you know, it's not that you did anything wrong. It just sometimes the enzyme goes away. But like I say, it's something you can live with and deal with, and with the lactate, you can still eat pretty much whatever you want. Now, I was commenting, it's not the same as an allergy. There are people who are actually allergic to dairy products, and sometimes babies. Now, obviously, we're all mammals. We're supposed to be drinking mother's milk and this kind of thing. And sometimes the baby is allergic. Just simply, they're lacking the enzyme. Excuse me. Yeah.
So, this is kind of a whole personal versus that's one thing, under behavior. So, the thing about both hormones.
Funny, you should be thanking me forever for that, by the way. That extra hour is tough. Like 8:20 and 9:20, it's really tough. I'd really rather have you awake for 2 hours than sleeping for 3, so.
You said all of this will be on our quiz on Tuesday?
Is all structures. I'll get to it. But we do have now one more combination. We get glucose and glucose. We get glucose and galactose. So now glucose and fructose.
That's still a disaccharide, correct?
I'm sorry,
That's still a disaccharide. Okay.
still doing disaccharides. See now, this will be a little more tricky. There's a lot of hydroxyl groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do condensation with any hydroxyls. Now we could have before. And it would be okay. All that would happen is we would get a different result. We would get a different product, that's all. But it would be legitimate. It would just be a different result. So in this case, even though we have a choice of several hydroxyls, I want to do these two. I want to do those two. We're going to take out water again. So otherwise, same reaction. Take out water, combine what's left. We took out water. There's the remaining oxygen. That goes up there. That, once again, we cannot say fructose and glucose. We have a disaccharide now. This is sucrose. That's sucrose. Anybody know what sucrose is? Because you do. Pardon me? Exactly right. Table sugar. This is what we call sugar. What you put in your coffee in the morning or evening, whatever. This is sugar. So sucrose, again, the reaction's the same reaction. Take out water, hydroxyl from one side, hydrogen from the other side. Take out water, connect the remaining oxygen to the other side. That's your disaccharide. Not one bit. Same reaction. So what we've seen now are 3 monosaccharides and 3 disaccharides. Maltose from 2 glucoses, lactose from glucose and galactose, and sucrose from glucose and fructose. Now, one pattern that we've seen is the OSE, glucose, galactose, lactose, maltose, and so on. The OSE tells you sugar. If there's OSE in the name, you know you have a sugar. But it's not always the case. There are sugars that don't have OSE. So basically, if OSE is there, you know it's a sugar. If the OSE is not there, it's probably not a sugar, but it might be. If the OSE is there, it's definite. You've got a sugar. I'm sorry. Oh, this is what you've been saying. Glucose, sucrose, all those OSEs. If the OSE is there, it's definitely a sugar. If it's not there, probably not a sugar, but it might be. So no guarantee on that one. Now, I was mentioning, right, a minute or two ago, people always wonder, excuse me, I'm sure by Thursday this will be better. People are always wondering how much of this you need to actually remember. Surprisingly, not as much as you think. I will give you the monosaccharides on the board. You don't need to remember those structures. I will give you the monosaccharides, unlabeled. So you'll have to be able to identify glucose and galactose and fructose. But that shouldn't be too hard, frankly. I will put those on the board for you. And then what I could do is ask you to draw for me maltose. So you'd have to know that maltose is 2 glucoses. So you'd have to know that. Maltose is 2 glucoses. Then you'd have to pick out on the board which one is glucose. And then you'd have to do a condensation reaction. In honesty, it really shouldn't be that big a deal. So I'll give you the monosaccharides. You'll simply have to know what to do with them. So it won't be that bad. You have to memorize all those structures. Any last questions or expressions of delight or anything?
Can you repeat that last statement?
I don't remember the last statement.
So we should be able to create the maltose
Yeah.
structure.
I will give you the monosaccharides. You just have to know what to do with them.
Okay.
So I could ask you to draw for me disaccharide. So you just have to pick out, you have to know in your head, the disaccharide is made up of what? Pick out on the board which one, and then use it. Well, thank you for being here tonight. Let's leave, and I'll see you again on Thursday at 6 o'clock.